American farmers are bracing for some big changes under President Trump's new immigration policy.
We don't know what to do with it because we don't know where it's going to go.
A barren field in Iowa. An abandoned dairy barn in Wisconsin. A shuttered food processing plant in California. Now, all that remains is silence. Not because farmers are lazy, not because the harvest failed, but because they simply can't go on no labor, no buyers, and not a single dollar of help from the government. And you think this has nothing to do with you. Look at your own dinner table. Beef now costs twice as much as it did last year. Eggs disappear from the shelves week after week. Milk. You've probably switched to the cheaper brand because prices won't stop climbing. American agriculture is collapsing quietly but steadily, and today we uncover the truth behind the 10 U.S. states where farmers are giving up where food production is no longer sustainable. This video is based on real data and current conditions. It does not intend to promote division or make absolute claims. 1. Iowa. If there was ever a place called the heart of American agriculture, it was Iowa. Endless rows of corn-silver grain silos stretching toward the sky. Tidy family farms like something out of a Norman Rockwell painting. This was once a symbol of faith, of stability, of a nation being fed. But now that heart is bleeding. In just the first 6 months of 2025, Iowa saw farm bankruptcy filings double compared to the same period last year, a number not seen since the Great Depression. Even farmers from 3 generations of land stewardship are walking away, not because they've lost love for the land, but because they simply can't go on. One farmer in Boone had to sell off his entire herd of cattle because no slaughterhouse would take them. A soybean export contract to China was canceled overnight after new tariffs hit, leaving behind nearly $1 million worth of unsold stock. Fertilizer fuel equipment repairs costs are soaring, but crop prices barely moving. And that's only half the problem. The other half is people. ICE raids have swept through livestock farms and processing plants across Iowa, leading to hundreds of arrests and worker disappearances. Those who remain are terrified, too afraid to show up. And in agriculture, losing just 10% of your labor force can stall everything. In Iowa, that number has topped 35%. Farms are closing, plants are shutting down. Cornfields that once rustled in the morning breeze now stand silent like graveyards. And do you know what's worse? It's that Americans, the very people who stood on their ancestral soil waking at 4 a.m. and working past sundown, are the first to be abandoned by the very system they trusted the most. They're not asking for pity, they just want to work. But now even that has been taken away. And if Iowa, once the symbol of resilience, can no longer hold the line, imagine what's happening farther west, where a single ICE operation shut down an entire plant. Before lunch. 2. Nebraska. In Nebraska, you don't need to read the news to know agriculture is in trouble. Just stand next to a truck loading dock on a Monday morning. No horns, no engines rumbling, and most importantly, nothing to haul. Glen Valley Foods, once one of the largest meat processing plants in the state, used to operate 24/7. 3 shifts a day, hundreds of workers, tens of tons of beef and chicken shipped across the country every single day. But after one surprise inspection, the entire operation nearly collapsed. Severe labor shortages, now running at less than 30% capacity, and even that is hanging by a thread. No one says it out loud, but everyone knows. When the familiar hands that cut, package, and label the meat stop showing up, the entire supply chain starts to unravel. And that breakdown doesn't stop at the factory. It hits the farms, the butcher shops, the families who make a living moving goods from soil to shelf. In a small town near Grand Island, a cattle farmer quietly admitted, "The animals still eat, still grow, but no one's coming to take them. And we can't keep feeding them forever." His family sold off over 40% of their herd at a loss just to avoid having to euthanize them like during the pandemic years. Here's the irony, people still want meat. The demand is there, but the fragile multi-layered system behind it is falling apart link by link. Nebraska was once a land of certainty, where men woke at 4 a.m. to work the fields, where women tended the hatcheries, where young people picked up their parents' dreams wearing boots caked in mud. But that dream isn't being destroyed by gunfire. It's dying in deadly silence, where no one gets fired, yet no one has work to do. And if a place as grounded as Nebraska is struggling this hard, imagine what's happening in regions with harsher climates, denser populations, and even more fragile supply chains. 3. California. In the Central Valley, once proudly known as America's Golden Fruit Belt, a haunting scene is becoming familiar. Apple orchards left abandoned, grapevines withering on the trellis. strawberry fields covered not with fruit but with dust. But the most painful emptiness is the one you can't see. The emptiness inside the hearts of growers. California produces more agriculture than any other state in America. Grapes, apples, strawberries, almonds, avocados, once the pride of the Golden State. But pride doesn't pay the bills, and the farmers here who once tamed dry land and turned it lush are running on fumes. Labor costs are up, water costs are up, fertilizer, machinery, packaging, everything is up. But what's rising even faster is fear. In Sebastopol, a local apple processing plant once employing nearly 200 workers shut down after just 1 month without a contract. The families who depended on it now face a brutal choice: leave or wait for a miracle. A grower in Tulare put it simply, "I've got land, I've got trees, I've got crops, but I don't have people to pick them. The ones who come are afraid of inspections. The ones who stay are too few to keep up with the harvest." You don't need a storm to destroy a farm, just a few weeks without workers, a few shipments that never leave, a few buyers who walk away, and like dominoes, it all collapses. And it's not just the farmers who pay the price. Massive supply chains, from national supermarket chains to food manufacturers that once relied on California's bounty, are scrambling to find replacements. But no other region matches California's freshness scale or quality. And the result is all too familiar: higher prices, tighter supply. And working-class American families are the first to feel the squeeze. California's agriculture isn't dying from lack of sunshine. It's dying because there's no longer room for real people doing real work. And every fruit tree left unpicked is another seat pulled away from America's dinner table. And if even a place as bright and bountiful as California is falling apart, then look further north, where the white fields of temperate states are facing a crisis born from something even colder. 4. Wisconsin. In Wisconsin, people used to say, if you've got a bucket and a cow, you'll never go hungry. But that was the past. This state was once America's dairy kingdom, where even the smallest towns carried the scent of fresh milk. From cheddar cheese to ice cream, from butter on breakfast toast to cold milk for the kids, Wisconsin was built on dairy. Not anymore. In just the first half of 2025, hundreds of small-scale dairy farms in Wisconsin have been forced to shut down. Some left nothing but overgrown grass. Others were sold off cattle equipment, even generations worth of family legacy, for prices so low, even the sellers felt ashamed. Why? There's no single reason, just a storm of everything a farmer can't control. Rising feed costs, higher fuel prices, maintenance and repair bills, and the milk they sell. Sometimes doesn't even cover the month's loan payment. To make matters worse, local dairy cooperatives, once seen as the safety net, are consolidating, merging, and even cutting off smaller farms to focus on larger partners with more capital. And more machines than people. This change isn't loud. It creeps in silently like a slow, hard winter. But it takes everything jobs pride and any reason the next generation might have to stay. In some areas, you'll now see old dairy barns turned into storage units, shooting ranges, even motels. The very milk that once nourished America is now being dumped, not because no one's drinking it, but because no one can afford to keep it flowing. Wisconsin isn't collapsing from a single disaster. It's breaking apart from years of quiet, relentless pressure, the kind you can't patch up once it's gone too deep. And when even the purest milk can no longer support the people who produce it, look west, where once fertile plains are now changing color, in the most literal sense of the word, drying up. 5. Kansas. They used to say, in Kansas, just follow the wind, and you'll know how the crops will grow. The wind would blow strong, lifting dust and seed and pollen, and with them hope. But this year the wind still blows, and the hope is gone. In rural Kansas, especially in the western and northern parts of the state, countless farms have been forced to pause planting, not because of natural disasters, but for a far more mundane reason: it costs more to grow than it's worth. Lifelong farmers now face a decision they never imagined: leave their land idle or leave farming altogether. The cost of equipment, from repairs to replacements, has doubled in just 5 years. Fertilizer prices have soared. Fuel for tractors and irrigation has gone through the roof. Many families have no choice but to let their fields sit empty, praying for a cheaper season, though no one knows if it will ever come. One thing is clear: farmers cannot carry all the risk while their profits are squeezed by forces they can't control. Skipping a planting season might mean postponing a child's college education, or taking on another credit card just to buy groceries. In some small towns, agricultural supply stores are quietly shutting down branches. Shipping and logistics are slowing. The entire rural support network, from agri-tech specialists to grain silos, is starting to shrink. There's no need for a public announcement. You can feel it in the silence, like an engine running dry, grinding into itself. The scariest part. The people here aren't known for complaining. They don't ask for much. But when an entire farming community chooses not to plant, that's no longer an economic decision. That's a sign that faith itself is drying up. And if Kansas, where golden fields once stretched to the horizon, is now hesitating to sow another season, then look further south to places where the weather is harsher and the burden of raising livestock is even heavier. The story there is far more dire. 6. Texas. In Texas, you can still drive past vast cattle ranches and see herds grazing peacefully, but behind that quiet image is a growing, undeniable sense of unease. As of early 2025, Texas still holds over 12.2 million head of cattle, the highest in the nation, but that number now feels hollow, like a lone figure standing in a heavy, silent room. The reason feedlot costs have surged to unimaginable levels. In May alone, the number of cattle in feedlots dropped nearly 3% as the price of hay and forage skyrocketed. You might think record high beef prices, nearly $6 per pound for ground beef and almost $11 for steak, would be good news for ranchers. But the truth is brutal. Every step of the process, transportation, slaughter, packaging has also become exponentially more expensive. Ranchers are left with painful choices: hold on to their herds and bleed money, or sell early at uncertain prices, hoping the next season brings cheaper feed, which no one can promise. And it gets worse. Persistent droughts have shrunk irrigated pasture land, especially near the southern border. Some ranchers have had to cut their herds or even switch to poultry, but that's no real fix for an infrastructure built entirely around beef. The USDA warns rebuilding a beef-producing herd takes up to 2 years, meaning Texas could face a prolonged production freeze, not just a temporary setback. What frightens working families most is the market isn't forgiving anymore. When prices go up, demand drops. Working-class families turn to chicken or frozen alternatives. Every time they open the freezer, they're reminded of a grocery bill that keeps growing. Ranchers know if consumers turn away, the collapse won't be sudden, but it will be relentless. Texas has what many states don't: cattle land legacy. But when scale becomes a liability, when massive operations are tied to massive debt and expensive inputs, even strength becomes a weakness. No political crisis is needed to shake the system. Just one more drought, one more spike in prices, and the foundation of America's beef capital will start to crack wide open. If Texas, the rock-solid icon of U.S. ranching, can't hold the line, what hope is left for smaller states back east? Those built not on cattle, but on dairy. 7. New York. One morning in the dairy farms of upstate New York, a familiar scene now feels eerily quiet. Milk trucks no longer arrive on time, storage tanks overflow, and the mechanical hum of milking machines has fallen silent. New York may not be the largest milk-producing state, but its high-quality dairy was once a source of pride, served in schools' kitchens and used to make famous local cheeses. Now, with farmers buckling under crippling costs, that pride is slowly being squeezed out. Skyrocketing feed and transportation expenses have landed a punishing blow. Even though milk prices have remained relatively high, they no longer cover production costs. A recent Cornell University study revealed that in the first quarter of 2025, average profits per gallon of milk in upstate New York turned from positive to negative. Many farms are being forced to shrink their herds, lay off workers, or even shut down weekend operations just to save on electricity bills. Banks alarmed by rising defaults have started to tighten agricultural lending, pushing farmers deeper into a financial chokehold. At the same time, local dairy processing plants are struggling to source enough raw milk. Some have had to partially suspend operations not because they want to, but because they simply can't continue. Small co-ops that once sustained independent farmers are now hanging by a thread. Multi-generational family farms are facing impossible choices: sell off land or pivot to niche crops like plant-based milk, tea, or fruit, not for growth, but simply to survive. Worse still, a growing sense of fear is spreading through the community. If New York's dairy chain collapses entirely, the state may have to import milk and dairy from other states or even from other countries. That could send prices soaring even higher. For working-class families and seniors, this isn't just about milk or cheese. It's about whether there will be enough to eat and whether bills can be paid each month. New York now faces a harsh dilemma. If even milk, a staple in every home, can't be sustained, then other agricultural sectors don't stand much of a chance either. This isn't a pessimistic prediction, it's a real-time warning echoing from the quiet footsteps of farmers silently leaving the land. And if the East, where dairy once symbolized security, can't stop the unraveling, then the Midwest, with its legacy of livestock, may soon face the first true shock of a breakdown no one thought possible. 8. Missouri. In Missouri, you don't need an economic chart to see that agriculture is in crisis. Just visit a rural gas station once packed with feed trucks, now reduced to a few old pickups parked outside a convenience store, with barely anyone walking in. What was once a hub for hog farming is now witnessing a quiet retreat, not because of land shortages, floods, or droughts, but because farmers can no longer survive a system that crushes them from all sides. Skyrocketing feed prices, unstable pork market rates, and processing plants that are slashing hours, cutting workers, or shutting down entirely. A mid-sized farm today must choose between continuing to raise pigs at a loss or selling off the herd before the next feed bill drags them under. Some owners have no choice but to lay off employees, men and women who've worked there for 10, even 15 years, and take on everything themselves, feeding, cleaning, hauling. But human strength has its limits, and once those limits are reached, everything collapses all at once. Unlike industries that allow flexible transitions, livestock farming is an all-in commitment. Once you're in, you're tied to the barns, the schedules, the delivery contracts. But when the market breaks down, that entire structure crumbles like a line of dominoes. And those left to pick up the pieces aren't the big corporations. They're the families who depend on every truckload, every shift at the slaughterhouse, every small order from the local meat co-op. Missouri isn't collapsing with a bang. It's dissolving quietly with each morning that brings no new orders, with each unpaid bank notice, with each dinner where fresh meat is swapped for canned goods. It's dissolving in the helplessness of those who once believed that hard work was enough to hold on to a decent life. And if a state like Missouri, where pork once stood for resilience and a strong supply chain is now barely holding on, then look farther north where farmers are facing a different kind of breakdown, colder, slower, but just as merciless. 9. North Dakota. In North Dakota, the land is still fertile, the skies still vast. But behind that seemingly peaceful landscape lies a quiet suffocation one only insiders truly feel. A suffocation not from disaster or drought, but from too much land and too few people to farm it, too many fields and not enough reason to plant them. One of America's largest grain-producing regions is slowly losing its identity not to blizzards or pests, but to the quiet erosion of false expectations and a support system that no longer supports. Farmers here no longer look to their crops for hope. They look at debt notices, delayed contracts, and government subsidies that arrive late, if at all, like prayers answered by chance. Their independence, once a point of pride, has been replaced by a prolonged sense of dependence. This year, many aren't planting corn or wheat, not because they don't want to, but because the cost of sowing a single season now exceeds anything they can scrape together. Even farms that have lasted 3 generations are starting to put parcels of land up for sale. Not because they're giving up, but because their children left long ago, and none are willing to return to a life that no longer offers hope. Fields that once rang with the sounds of harvest now stand empty through spring grass creeping into half-finished furrows. In small towns, the dominoes are starting to fall. When farms go idle, so do seed stores, fertilizer suppliers, and equipment shops. Schools cut classes. Local hospitals shorten their hours. Communities once tightly knit are unraveling, not from a lack of trust, but from the loss of a predictable future. And the scariest part is no one knows how to reverse it. There's no great storm, no visible catastrophe, only the slow withering of an agricultural way of life that once stood as a pillar. Withering not from the soil, but from the soul, from a fading will to keep going. It's something you can't measure in numbers, but it's the clearest sign of decline. North Dakota isn't collapsing with headlines or tragedy. It's fading quietly like color bleeding out of a photograph. And if a place this vast and fertile can no longer hold on, then imagine the battle awaiting in the West, where land once praised as a green paradise is now facing a problem even more unsolvable. 10. Oregon. Everything here has simply become too expensive for people to keep going. Labor costs have surged after repeated minimum wage hikes. Electricity, irrigation, fertilizer equipment. Every single cost is climbing. Small farms, once the soul of Oregon's agricultural model, are quietly collapsing one by one. Many farmers are choosing not to plant this season. Not because they're lazy, but because they no longer believe they can harvest anything other than losses. But what's even more frightening is this. When farmers go silent, society hears nothing. Empty fields, abandoned greenhouses, dust-covered tractors. None of it makes enough noise to set off alarms. The distribution system still moves. Supermarkets remain fully stocked, but most of it now comes from elsewhere, from large-scale industrial farms, not from local hands anymore. In the once bustling Willamette Valley, where seasonal fruit pickers used to fill the orchards, farm owners are now turning down orders due to labor shortages. No workers, no contracts. No contracts, no cash. No cash flow, and the farm is lost. That collapse begins with what seems like a small decision, not enough people to pick the berries. For many Oregonians, farming used to be a way of life, a family heritage. Now they face a cruel choice: sell the land to investors or watch it drown in debt, and most choose to surrender quietly. The land that once grew organic vegetables is now being fenced off, soon to become vacation homes for out-of-state buyers. Once land changes hands, it rarely returns to agriculture. Oregon isn't falling apart through some dramatic event. It's withering through thousands of tiny, scattered decisions, all leading to the same destination: giving up. And if a state once praised as a national model of sustainable agriculture can't survive, the bigger question is how many places will follow. Next, America has never lacked land, people, or potential. But what we are missing, and missing badly, is real protection for the people who feed this nation every single day. As more farms are abandoned, more fields go untilled, and more rural communities fade into silence. Who will speak up? Can you still believe that the supermarket shelves will always be full? Your dinner table always stocked with meat, milk, and vegetables if the very people producing them are stepping away one by one. This video does not promote division within the United States or encourage secession. All content presented here is intended to explore, analyze, and spark conversation based on current events, emotional realities, and social trends. We fully respect the U.S. Constitution and all federal laws. If you found this video valuable, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss future content where we uncover the stories that mainstream media too often overlooks. The analysis in this video is based on current data and independent perspectives. It is not meant to offer absolute predictions or spread misinformation. We hope this information encourages our communities to reflect and act before it's too late.